I want to thank Mrs. Rajavi, the Iranian resistance movement. This is a distinguished panel. American, European, African, military, diplomatic, politicians. The politicians are the best ones. But I think if there's one objective that we all want here is the need for democracy in Iran. One. Two, we need to protect the residents and the human beings who've suffered enough at Camp Ashraf. Protect them from attacks, protect them to make sure they keep their human rights. If they move to Camp Liberty, that this be an adequate facility, that it be a protected facility. There's so many guarantees that are needed. Number three, for that to happen and for this movement to be strengthened, my hope is that the United States government delists the MEK. I think that's critically important.
I trust you. I have faith in you, and I want to be part of the solution that you know is right. Governor Rendell did a wonderful job, and I echo and compliment and celebrate what he said. I too am frustrated because I think your people have kept your word, made your sacrifices, gone the extra mile to demonstrate goodwill, partnership, and responsibility. I'm troubled that the United States of America gave its word, and then when it was no longer easy for them to keep it, they transferred the word to a regime in Iran that is really acting through a government in Iraq. And that troubles me. So I stand with you as someone who got involved because I was a skeptic, who got educated, gained respect, saw how people on the ground from the United States had their expectations far exceeded by the goodwill of your people. And I stand with you. So I hope that the United States will exercise greater leadership in saying the definition of your new home for your residents of Camp Ashraf, defined as Camp Liberty, is not a home at all. It looks like a detention center for people who should not be detained, that have done nothing wrong, they've kept their word, and then some.
À présent, le régime iranien n'a pas réussi à venir au bout de ces femmes et de ces hommes si décidés à réaliser leur projet d'une société juste, libre, pluraliste et laïque. Alors, il cherche, en faisant pression sur son allié irakien, à déraciner et à éradiquer le camp d'Ashraf et sa merveilleuse expérience de société. Aujourd'hui, le gouvernement irakien veut transformer le camp Liberty, qui porte si mal son nom, en prison, et veut forcer les Ashrafiens à l'occuper sans les moyens de subsistance minimum. Il n'est pas acceptable qu'avec un mur de 4 mètres de haut, avec l'interdiction de sortir du camp, avec des stations de police à l'intérieur de ce camp, une présence de plusieurs dizaines de policiers, dans un espace restreint où vivent près d'1 millier de femmes, je disais, il n'est pas acceptable de laisser faire cela. Car lors des précédentes attaques de la population d'Ashraf, les forces de police irakiennes ont fortement été infiltrées par des agents iraniens qui ont insulté, menacé et agressé des femmes. Rappelons que le 8 avril dernier, 8 femmes ont été assassinées. Je voudrais donc insister particulièrement aujourd'hui sur le fait qu'il est inacceptable de tolérer des policiers irakiens en armes à l'intérieur de ce camp. Sinon, les habitants sont en droit de refuser de s'installer à Liberty.
Nous avons été confrontés au double langage du gouvernement irakien, dont le chef est vendu aux mollahs. Aujourd'hui, il s'agit pour les résidents d'Ashraf, et nous devons les soutenir dans cet objectif, d'obtenir les garanties pour que le transfert devienne possible, sûr, entre Ashraf et le camp Liberté près de Bagdad. Des négociations ont eu lieu, mais avec une caractéristique, c'est que les résidents d'Ashraf n'y ont été à aucun moment associés. Certes, M. Martin Kobler, le représentant spécial du secrétaire général de l'ONU, a fait des allers-retours, mais nous pouvons considérer aujourd'hui que les garanties n'ont pas été données comme il convient aux résidents d'Ashraf pour garantir leur transfert en sécurité.
And there are many who say, unfortunately, and with regret, that there is no alternative to sanctions and threats of violence to deter the regime in Tehran from the foolish course that they are following at the present time. But I believe, and I believe strongly, that there is a better way. There is a better way than sanctions, a better way than military force or the threat thereof. And that better way is support for the democratic transformation of Iran. And that means, my friends, support for Madame Rajavi and her organization. Because unlike those who took power in the wake of the change in regime 33 years ago, she is fully prepared for power. She understands the needs of our people. She has one of the most professional political organizations in the world, as we can see here in this assembly, prepared to take on the responsibility of restoring this great country of Iran, this great civilization, to its proper place in the world. The best way to guarantee the peace in the world that we in this part of the world so desperately need is to support the removal of the MEK from the terrorist list.
Why didn't we say no? Why didn't we stand up and say the MOU is being violated? The same MOU that the UN put together, the UN won't even enforce. The UN won't even enforce the MOU that Ambassador Kobler signed. It's already been violated in regards to personal property and automobiles. Where is the backbone of the UN? Why doesn't it say to the Iraqi government, you signed this, those automobiles and the personal property is coming into Camp Liberty, period. Period. The UNHCR says freedom of movement is essential. They produced a document about 10 days ago saying freedom of movement is essential to any refugee camp. And yet the Iraqi government said no freedom of movement. Why didn't we object when the original camp was supposed to be literally 10, 15 times bigger than the area in this camp? Why didn't we object to the fact that there's no recreation, no facilities for women, no facilities for the disabled, no facilities for the sick? How dare they say that this camp meets basic standards? This is a humanitarian issue. And by the way, this is always referred to as a temporary transfer station. Well, at the same time, they admit that the immigration process for some of the residents of Ashraf may take up to 2 years. Anybody here think 2 years sounds temporary? And yet that's the excuse they give for the low standards. Well, it's only a temporary camp. Nobody's going to have to live in here very long. 2 years is very long. What's wrong with letting 23 former U.S. officials, governors, secretaries, generals, former CIA, former FBI people, we were willing to go over at our own expense, and I want to
emphasize that because the other side makes a big deal about the fact that we get paid speakers' fees. All 23 of us were willing to go over, we told Madame Rajavi, at our own expense to look at the camp. And have well, don't thank us. Don't thank us yet. We haven't gone. And the reason we haven't gone is because the Iraqi government said no. Well, where is the UN and the US? What were we going to do? Were we going to be subversive? Were we going to somehow undermine the security of the Iraqi government by going over and looking to see if the camp had basic minimum standards? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a joke. They said we had to be out of there by 12/31, December 31st, and yet nothing was ready by December 31st. And now only 1 out of 7 sections is ready. We should call it, sometimes in politics and government, if you have a plan and the plan's clearly not working, you call it off. We should call this off and let everybody stay at Ashraf. So if we acted in Benghazi, if we acted in Kosovo, we need to act in Ashraf. We need the United States. We need the United States to be what we've always been, the protectors of freedom, democracy, and human dignity and rights all over the world. It's time for the talking to end. It's time for the UN and the US to show some backbone, and I don't want to hear them condemn the slaughter if it happens after it happens. And if we stand by and let it happen again, shame on us.
I think it is time for the regime in Iran to go, and you all represent the change that is needed. Particularly distressing are the circumstances at Camp Ashraf. Simply put, the United States has a moral obligation to protect the people there. The facts on this are all very clear, and you know them. The place where the Iraqis want to move the Camp Ashraf residents is not another camp as proposed. It is a virtual prison. In the proposed new location, residents will apparently be denied access to lawyers, be denied unlimited access to health care, be denied freedom to receive family members, be denied access to their own property, and be denied the freedom to leave that camp. And yet they call this facility Camp Liberty. I'd like to know what they would term a camp that was called Camp Detention. Simply doesn't make sense. And if the United Nations believes that what they've entered into here is correct, they should be ashamed of themselves that they have approved this location. If we really believe that the international community has a role to play, then it is our responsibility, just as it was in Libya, to prevent slaughter. And if we could do this in Libya, surely we could do this at Camp Ashraf and protect the people who live there. All I can say is this. This will take determination. Fortunately, you have it. It will take strong allies, both in the governments of the United States and in the European community and in the United Nations. And it will mean putting a lot of pressure on all of those people, especially those who are ready and can make a difference if they change their position. But you have the strength to do that. Finally, you have something that's more important than anything else going for you. And that is that you represent a strong moral cause. And the forces of history and of human development are on your side. Because the forces of history on our planet are very clear. You have a tremendous group of allies here and others you've heard from in the past. And now it's up to all of us to stop just the speech giving and turn from talk to action.